Education opens doors for the gospel, bringing hope to dark places and sparking lasting change around the world. At Teach Beyond, we're reaching the nations through education.
This is Transformed and Transformational, a podcast from Teach Beyond. I'm Kian.
And I'm Heather. We're exploring how the gospel transforms us and overflows to impact classrooms, communities, and the world.
Let's jump into today's conversation. Today's a fun episode because we get to talk to a team of people who work at one school. We're talking about conflict, and we thought it'd be helpful to talk to a group of people that actively work together and therefore have surely experienced at least a little bit of conflict.
For sure. I think working alongside and living with other people brings out conflict naturally. We all have different opinions, different perspectives, our past life experiences. We bring these different things to the table as we're interacting with each other. And, maybe some people are also more willing to voice their thoughts and opinions than others. And as we think specifically of a school setting, we often work closely with colleagues in the same department or grade level or program. And sometimes it can feel like we think so alike and it's so easy to work together. But then often there are people that can rub us the wrong way or maybe are just having a bad day, or there could be even some cultural values coming into play. So we're talking today about how we can navigate conflict in the school workplace setting. So this isn't conflict resolution between students, but more so focusing on interactions as staff members and how that sets the tone for the work environment.
Right. So before we get started and into this conversation, I'm curious, and this is a question we're going to ask them as well. What kind of a person are you when conflict is happening around you, Heather? Are you a type of person who just like dives right into conflict, like, okay, let's do this? Or do you kind of run away from it? How do you handle it?
Well, it's hard to answer this question about every possible situation, right? But I think I tend to be someone who wants the conflict resolved. So in my mind, that does often mean that I'm like quicker to want to talk about it, work it out. Let's like figure out what's going on, when sometimes you have to wait a little bit of time, like give people some space to think and process. And so I think for me, I am more naturally someone who just like wants to get to the resolution. What about you, Kian?
Yeah, I think part of my nature for my whole life has always been kind of just run from conflict and hope that it goes away somehow. I don't know how it goes away, but just that's not my problem. Hope it goes away. And so as I've been an adult, been a learning curve to realize that
Mm,
that really isn't the best way to handle conflict, and you kind of actually have to go and approach it
mm.
and deal with it head on at some level.
Yeah, yeah. We'll have to see what our guests have to say. But, I think there is that element that we all bring that different perspective of how we approach conflict that adds to the mix, too. And it's funny, Kian, when you started out, you said you called this a fun episode. And I was thinking some people might not think that conflict is a very fun topic to talk about. But I think you were saying it's a fun episode specifically because we get to talk with a group that knows each other well and works closely together.
Exactly. Today we have three staff members from GDQ International Christian School in Albania. We have Lori Neuman returning to the podcast. Lori is the head of school and was featured on our head of school roundtable last season.
We also have Peter Sargent, school chaplain at GDQ, who's from Texas, has taught there as well as in Paraguay. And Peter holds degrees in health, PE, education, and apologetics, and has taught in all those areas.
And finally, Nathan Cook. He has a background in engineering and now teaches high school at GDQ.
Now, we didn't ask these three to have this conversation with us because we think they have a lot of conflict, just to be clear.
For sure.
But we know that they will be honest and transparent about the challenges they've faced. And also, we have a lot to learn from the way they approach conflict proactively and humbly.
Let's go over to that conversation now. Hi, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be with you.
All right, as we get started, so we have a group of you guys with us, and so people can get to know your voice and hear a little bit about you. I would love it if you guys could just say your name and what your role is at GDQ.
I'm Lori Neuman. I am the head of school at GDQ.
I'm Nathan Cook. I teach some math and science classes in the high school.
And I'm Peter Sargent, the K-12 chaplain.
Great. Thanks so much. And today we have a topic that, Some of us like to dance around, maybe avoid this a little bit, and that's conflict. So thanks for being willing to enter into this conversation with us. And before we get into talking about navigating conflict specifically in the school setting, I'd love to hear, what would you say is your general approach toward conflict? Some people tend to go, right into it and like, hey, can we have a conversation about this? Or, go right at it. And other people tend to want to let it linger for a while, or they need some time to process. So, what does that look like for each of you?
Well, for myself, I would naturally think, I would assume that I am the type of person who would rather resolve it as fast as possible. And that might just be going, just straight into it, trying to figure out what everyone's perspective is, and bring things to a head, bring things to closure. But I don't know. Sometimes I think it really depends on the context of the conflict. There are probably instances where I would just rather leave things alone, or just pretend there's not a problem. So, but I probably err on the side of wanting to resolve it. And I think for me, a challenge is to make sure that I do it with gentleness, to not make the conflict worse than it needs to be.
Yeah, yeah. That's the goal, right? That's good. Thanks, Nathan.
I think in theory, I'd like to resolve it as quickly as possible, but sometimes I need to chew on it a little bit to make sure that kind of I'm the right person, saying it at the right time in the right way. Sometimes I'll try it out in my head and realize that needs some work. I kind of wait to respond to an email, or
Mm,
but yeah, if I think I'm the right person, it's the right time, then I'm happy to go for it. Like me some conflict.
I like to think that I jump into conflict, and I think I do sometimes. I always do when I need to, but I don't enjoy it as much as. Well, I don't know if anyone actually enjoys it, but
mm.
what I've realized is what I view conflict is not the same as what some people view conflict. So I'm just talking with people, and then they're like, "That's a conflict." I'm like, "That's not a conflict." So I think some of it too is like knowing what is a conflict and then how I address it. Well, if I don't think it's a conflict, then wouldn't address it in the same way as if someone
Right.
thought it was a conflict. So I do like to listen to people's perspectives and give it a little bit of space and time so that people's emotions can calm down. And definitely the whole thing of not responding quickly to an email and text message, I think goes a long
Mm,
way. So
mhm.
I will address it. I will address it as soon as I feel like that's a good time to do it.
It's interesting you mentioned how some things you think of as not conflict, other people might think of as conflict. And I think that's true, just human nature, people from different families and how they dealt with conflict. But then adding in the fact that you're in Albania, it's a cross cultural situation. You have Canadians, Americans, all kinds of people from all over the globe teaching in this one school, this one environment. And there's already going to be staff conflict in any work environment. So I'm curious, what would you say that healthy conflict looks like for you in a Christian school staff environment?
What you said reminded me when we had talked about this. We said, it's possible to have a one-sided conflict. So it could be that I'm upset and I feel like conflict is happening when a conflict is actually not happening. And I think, like what you said, especially on cross cultural teams, in Albania, people speak in a loud voice and passionately, which might seem like a conflict to someone on the outside, but it's just no,
Sure.
I'm just talking about my coffee and what I think about this and what I
Yeah.
think about that. No conflict at all. When it could be like, why is someone shouting at me? What is
Yeah.
going on? So I think definitely the cross cultural teams plays a big part of it. But I feel like as a school, we want to have the school be a safe place so that people can voice disagreements that they have and know that someone will listen to them. I think Nate, you had some good things to say about what you think about that.
Well, when it comes to conflict, I mean, there's a whole range of variation in that, isn't there? I mean, you can have
Mhm.
conflict that is deeply personal, that stirs up the emotions, that can be difficult to even process. And then you can also have conflict that may not be so touched by emotion, but there's a problem. There's a
Mhm.
mismatch in perspective. Maybe it could be as simple as a policy thing. I think we talk about that later, but So yeah, in the context of GDQ, where there are people from so many different backgrounds, I mean, it's not an American school, it's not an Albanian school, it's not a Canadian school. It really is just a mix of different cultures, different personalities, and so you kind of almost have to expect that perspectives are not going to just align, not naturally, and definitely not 100% of the time. So you're going to have disagreements that could easily be categorized as conflict, different kinds. So I think that's one thing that helps to resolve conflict, is on some level to expect there to be at least different perspectives,
Mhm,
um,
mhm,
and um, and with that mentality, that kind of helps prepare the ground, as it were, to be able to resolve conflict when it shows up. Obviously, when there's deep personal hurt, that can be another matter. Although that
mhm,
too can just stem from very different perspectives on
mhm,
how things should be done or how someone should behave in any given context. I mean, I'm being pretty general at the moment, but yeah, there just needs to be this awareness that as you're rubbing shoulders with so many different people, you're going to be stepping on toes. That's a little cheesy to say it that way, but that
mhm,
that is kind of a metaphor for
mhm.
life.
Yeah. We think about, being together on a team, having good team unity doesn't mean that we're all going to think the same thing about something. And so naturally, those disagreements or different perspectives are going to kind of pull at that. And so, what we do with that and healthy conflict means that there will be different perspectives, but what we do with that moves us forward, right? So, well, for each of you, you each have a different role in the school as head of school and chaplain and teacher. How would you say that that impacts your role then in navigating or resolving conflicts?
Well, most of the time I find myself mediating conflict. So if conflict happens, most of the time, if it's between staff, then that would be something that I would engage in. And so yeah, that's often how I find myself. If it's between students, then dean of academics, only one of the heads of the sector would deal with it. But I often find myself mediating conflict between people. And actually, we had a situation that Peter and I, and that involved that.
I was actually the offender in this case, but it was it was me as a dad. So I'm the school chaplain, but my daughter was having trouble with one of her teachers, and got an email, and had some stuff to work on. We worked on it, but then a little while later, we got another email, and she wanted to meet, and she said, if this isn't resolved, then I'm gonna send her to the principal's office. And we went in, and the teacher and my daughter and I were talking, and I actually thought that my daughter had made a lot of progress in this area, and yet I felt like the teacher was escalating it as though it was worse. So I was talking to my kid and saying, "Wow, isn't that great how you've improved in this and this area?" And I was kind of uh, sideways digging, kind of passive aggressively digging at the teacher by saying, "Why are you why are?" I wasn't saying this, but I was insinuating, "Why are you escalating this?" When really I think my daughter is making progress. What's the matter with you? So I left that very unsuccessful meeting, and she went to Lori, and um, so then Lori mediated this discussion, and she said, "I kind of felt like you were degrading, me by the way you were talking to your daughter." And I said, "Funny you bring that up. I actually was. I felt like you were kind of talking down to me, and that you were not recognizing the progress that she was trying to make in this area, being more engaged and being distracted." Um, so it was kind of some different roles there. Lori is the head of school. I work at the school, but really I was being a dad, and the teacher, and it was really helpful to have that conversation. I was humbled and made aware of kind of the way that I had made things worse. But in the end, I think it came around, and we were able to move forward.
And I think that is challenging when you have someone that has multiple hats. So someone that has kids at the school and is also on staff, because then if his daughter's teacher were to come to him, it's like, well, am I talking to you